Welcome to the Think Like a Saver Town Hall series. Settle in as our America Saves team, industry experts, and influencers share with you how to prepare for three major life events now. Education, homeownership, and retirement are three big savings goals that we all have, but often tend to put off until someday because they don't feel like an urgent need. We thank you for joining us and invite you to engage with us, share comments, ask questions, and most importantly, get the support you need to take action towards your own financial well-being.
Well, welcome to Saving for Major Life Milestones. I'm Kia Young, Director of Communications here at America Saves, and I am so glad to have you here for our third and final installment of our Think Like a Saves virtual town hall series of the year 2020. When we first started planning for this project at America Saves, we honestly had no idea what the response would be. But what we did know is that we wanted to make a positive impact for our savers, which is what we call our about 800,000 Americans who've taken the America Saves Pledge or Military Saves Pledge. I think we can safely say after the past few weeks of having these town halls that by your feedback that you've given us, we have met that goal of supporting you and having an impact. So as we move into Thanksgiving week, I think I can speak for the entire team at America Saves when I say that you guys are on the high list of things that we are grateful for and have a ton of gratitude for. So thank you so much for being here. I want to wish you an early happy Thanksgiving. So today's town hall is about milestones and how to save for them, especially with most of us still dealing from the ramifications of the COVID pandemic. Before we jump into what's going to be a fantastic question and answer session with our panel of experts, I wanted to share two things that our savers should know that are just for your benefit today, okay? Before we jump into those questions and answers. First, just by being here, because you are here right now watching this town hall, you actually qualify for one-on-one financial coaching and counseling from an accredited financial counselor. This complimentary service is being offered by our friends at AFCPE and Yellow Ribbon Network. You guys, this is a fantastic opportunity to get an outside perspective on your finances, to get your questions answered. AFC's accredited financial counselors are so knowledgeable. They know about all kinds of resources and can connect you with and to whoever or whatever you need to meet your financial goals. I know that because we are pretty lucky here at America Saves. We have our own AFC on staff, Lila Quintiliani, and she's just a breath of knowledge. So knowing that you guys can get that one-on-one just makes my heart happy. It makes us happy here at America Saves. So don't pass up that opportunity, okay? We'll be dropping the chat and the link for you to get all signed up for your complimentary financial coaching and counseling. What a great way to go into the year 2021, right? When you sign up, please remember, let them know that America Saves referred you, okay? Very important. The second thing you need to know today is that you can actually win $500 today to jumpstart your savings goal. Thanks to our friends over at Cross River, we'll be giving away five $500 cash prizes. All you have to do are two things. One, head on over to the America Saves Facebook page if you're not there yet when the webinar is over, and share your top takeaway in the comments of this broadcast. We'll link it in the comments for you so that you don't have to go searching for it. It's on the America Saves Facebook page. The second thing is to make sure that you've taken the America Saves Pledge or Military Saves Pledge in the past year. So if you're wondering what the America Saves Pledge or Military Saves Pledge is, that is a pledge that our savers take. It's a commitment to yourself on what you want to save for, how much you'll save per month, and for how long you want to save. So basically, what you're getting is a plan to save. We're creating a plan to save. And we know when savers have a plan, they're 2 times more likely to meet their goal. So the pledge is your plan, okay? After you've taken the pledge, America Saves and Military Saves continues to support you with tips that are specific to what you are actually saving for. Okay, these aren't general savings tips unless you're looking for general savings. That is an option. We send it to you via emails, in our Facebook groups, social media, even text message if you want. We like to think of ourselves as your savings accountability partner. So we'll drop the link to the chat we'll drop the link in the chat to both the America Saves Pledge and Military Saves Pledge. For those of you that are in the military, huge thank you to you and your families for your service. I personally am a veteran and a military spouse. So we love creating the support for the military community as we personally know the unique set of challenges you face. Okay, I've talked a lot. Who's ready to jump into some questions? Let's start with me introducing our incredible panel of experts. First up is the incomparable Rick Edelman. Rick is the founder of Edelman Financial Engines, best-selling author and host of Rick Edelman Radio. For the last 30 years, he's been teaching everyday Americans all about personal finance. So happy to have you here, Rick.
Thank you.
Let me introduce Brianna. Brianna McGurran is a loans analyst at Forbes Advisor and was previously a staff writer and spokesperson at NerdWallet, where she had a column called Ask Brianna, a financial advice column syndicated by the Associated Press. She has lent her expertise in articles and on-air interviews to news outlets including New York Times, ABC World News Tonight, and Today Show. Thanks for being here, Brianna.
Thank you.
Natalie Campisi. Natalie is a home and mortgage expert at Forbes Advisor and was previously senior mortgage reporter and analyst for Bankrate. She's covered unemployment on Capitol Hill, was a reporter at the Tampa Tribune. Her work has appeared in lots of publications like CNBC, the Chicago Tribune, and MSN. And then Mr. Taylor Tepper. Hey, Taylor. He is an investing and retirement analyst at Forbes Advisor, an award-winning journalist who has covered a range of personal finance topics in several publications, including New York Times and NPR. He's currently earning his CFP designation at University of Texas. What a great fun fact. Thanks for sharing that with us, Taylor, and thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, y'all.
I am so thankful to have all of you here today to share your expertise with our savers. We're huge fans of you all individually at America Saves, so I know our savers are in for a treat. So Rick, before we jump in, I'd love for you to kind of help me set the stage here, right? So we're in this strange dichotomy of most of America experiencing unprecedented financial hardship. Not saying that they weren't struggling prior to the pandemic, but it has definitely compounded and exacerbated financial instability that quite a bit of Americans were already experiencing. So that doesn't quite shift our needs or desires to save for those big milestones, right? We still want to save for education. We still want to own a home one day. We still have to save for retirement, right? So could you help us out and give us some context? How do you do that? How do you prepare for these milestones during and beyond COVID?
Kia, thank you. It's a pleasure to be with all of you, and it's such an impressive panel. I'm a little intimidated here. So thanks for taking the time. You're right. The pandemic has made a challenging situation even more challenging. 110 million Americans went into the pandemic already in credit card debt. And 25% of them have had to increase the amount of credit card debt they have because of the challenges of unemployment, reduction in pay, furloughing, the healthcare crisis that has affected so many millions of American families. And in the midst of all this, you have to wonder, how can I possibly move forward with my personal finances and achieving my goals when I'm actually moving backwards as a result of the pandemic? Well, my message to you is, we've been here before, and we're going to be here again in the future. Think back to 2008, not all that long ago, we had a similar number of Americans unemployed. Think back to the 1970s recession, if you're old enough for that. Think to the year 2000 with the dot-com bubble bursting. America has experienced crises ever since our nation was founded in 1776. We bounce from crisis to crisis, and you're going to go through more crises in the future as well. Now, what does that mean? It means that we need to change our thinking. A lot of times people think that we experience two economic environments, good times and bad times. That's really not correct. We have bad times and preparing for bad times. And what we need to do is take advantage of the good times, the relatively better times, to use some of our income and set it aside for the future, because we don't know what the future holds, only that there will be turmoil. And it's not just bad stuff that happens to us. We were getting a lot of bad stuff in COVID, of course, in this environment, but bad things happen. The car breaks down, the roof leaks, a child falls and breaks an elbow. I mean, bad stuff happens. But you know what? Good stuff costs you money too. Your sister announces she's getting married. That means you got to buy a dress or rent a tux. You got to buy a present, maybe buy an airplane ticket to go to the wedding. Even good stuff, birthdays, weddings, graduations, celebrations of all sorts cost money. So we need to anticipate that life, no matter what comes upon us, is going to be expensive. And by recognizing that, we can start to save on the side. And how you save, where you save, how much you save, all depends on your circumstances. In an environment like this, you're in one of two situations. You've either had a financial challenge this year, job loss, furlough, what have you, or you haven't. If you have not yet, and I say yet because we don't know what the future holds with COVID, if you have not yet lost your job, you need to prepare for the risk that you might. And if you have already lost your job, heaven forbid, then we need to focus, hunker down, and deal with only the key expenses that matter, which is food and medicine. Every other expense can frankly wait until we can get ourselves back on our feet with economic recovery in the months and years to come. And we need to recognize we might need to delay some of our goals. We may need to alter them a little bit, but that's all part of the financial planning process. The bottom line is keep your enthusiasm intact, keep your optimism in place, recognize that we will get through this, just as like we've gotten through every crisis our nation has ever faced. And with help and guidance, such as what was being provided to you here and the wonderful organizations that Kia has mentioned, you can succeed. You don't have to go it alone. Don't feel that you do. There are a lot of organizations, a lot of talented advisors ready and able to assist you and give you the advice that can be valuable for you and your families.
Rick, that is just such amazing context, especially the idea that we have to save for the good times as well, those fun things. We say that your emergency savings isn't necessarily just for when you have a car breakdown, but also it's for times where you do have, for me, Beyonce once, is going on tour, I need to get tickets, okay?
Exactly.
So I know that our savers are going to have plenty more questions for our experts, and our team is pulling questions from the comments on Facebook inside the webinar. So savers, keep them coming, put them in the chat, and we'll hopefully be able to address them live today. Let's turn to education. Brianna, question for you. What is the best way and also like different options that we have to save for our children's education?
We'll talk about a great thing to save for. I also loved what Rick said, that you have to save for the good things. And going to college is a really exciting, amazing milestone that we should all be really excited for if it's our children that we're saving for or ourselves. And there are a ton of ways to save for college. But if you're a parent, really the best option for most people is a 529 college savings plan. You might have heard of this before. It's a dedicated college savings plan that you can save for kind of like an investment account for retirement, like a 401k or an individual retirement account. You'll put money aside each month, and that money will grow over time according to market conditions. And we know that the stock market in general over time will end up growing. So the sooner that you can start saving, the better, because that money has more time to grow. The cool thing about 529 college savings plans is they are tax advantaged, which means the money grows tax-free. And when you withdraw the money, you don't have to pay taxes on it as long as you're using it for qualified education expenses. So if you're a parent that opens a 529 for your child, as long as you withdraw it to send your kid to school and use it for education expenses, you won't have to pay tax on that money. Another great thing about 529 plans is that you can have other people contribute to them. So say that you start an account for your child, a grandparent, an aunt, or an uncle can give money toward that account for your child. So if they're saying, what should I get your kid for Christmas or for the holidays or for a birthday, you can say you can actually help contribute to their college fund by giving money to a 529. Now, it's states that run 529 college savings plans, but you don't have to pick the plan that's offered by your state, although in a lot of cases you'll want to because states offer tax benefits particular to home state plans. Another thing to remember is, we're talking about saving over a really long period of time. Maybe in your case, you haven't started saving yet, and you have a child who's going to school in the next year or two. It's okay. You don't have to panic. There's always time to save. You can save a little bit now, and that'll still reduce a debt burden for your child or for you. But if you do have to take out student loans, now is actually a pretty good time to take out federal student loans. And that's because student loan interest rates are at the lowest they've ever been, 2.75% for undergraduates who are going to school this year. So while it's really okay to want to avoid debt, it's actually a great thing to want to avoid debt, there are some cases when you have to borrow in order to go to school, and federal student loans are the way to go if you do have to take out student loans. The thing you want to avoid is taking out private loans that come with really high interest rates and not as many consumer protections.
Really, really great information. Our last town hall, Robin, your peer, gave us a lot of information about specifically around student loans. So that was really great to kind of hear that, both of you are thinking the same way and helping our savers think the same way. I do have a quick question about the 529 plans. The plan itself, is it tied to a particular child? So if you have more than one child, let's say you were saving for your oldest decided to go into the military, and so now you have all this money. Could you transfer that to another child, or is it not specific as long as it's being used for education?
You can transfer beneficiaries if you have to. So that's a really good flexible thing because there may be a case when a child that you've been saving for decides not to go to school, for instance. You could even save or use the money for yourself. If it turns out that you've opened a plan for a child, but they're not going to use the money, you can use the money for your own education expenses, as long as it fits into those rules of what qualified educational expenses are.
Very, very great insights, Brianna. Thank you so much. I know our attendees will have way more education questions. We're going to switch it up a little bit and come back to those. Let's talk to Natalie. Natalie, here's a question for you about the goal of homeownership. What if I wanted to buy a home in the next, let's say, 1 to 3 years? Not right now, in a few years. What are the steps that I should take to prepare for that?
That's a great question. There are a few basic steps you want to take, and preparing a few years in advance puts you at a great advantage because you'll have time to do a few key things that will help lower your interest rate and also, give you some time to save for that down payment. So the first thing you want to do is start saving for your down payment. A down payment less than 20%, which is a lot. Most people don't put 20% down anymore, but a down payment of less than 20% usually triggers private mortgage insurance. So that it's also called PMI. So that is kind of an additional cost that you'll pay each month if you don't put 20% down. The other thing is the more you save and the more you can put down, the better interest rate you can get. Banks look upon bigger down payments favorably, so that's always a good thing in your favor. So start saving. The other thing you'll want to do is look at your credit score. Right now, you can get free credit reports from all 3 credit bureaus. So take a look at that and make a plan on how to improve your credit score if it needs to be improved. So you want to shoot for a 740 credit score or higher if you don't have that already, because those higher credit scores are usually rewarded with the lowest interest rates. And of course, the lower your interest rate, the cheaper your loan. And right now we're in a very low rate environment. Mortgage rates are they're less than 3% on average. So and most experts expect them to stay around that rate for the next year. So if you're going to buy within the next year, you'll likely be able to lock in a lower rate. So definitely look at your And then the other thing you want to do is, if you're in the city where you want to buy your home, start looking at neighborhoods, and that'll give you a good idea of where you live, how much the home prices are. You can compare that with your budget and sort of get all your finances in line, and that'll be very helpful when it's time to buy.
Information last town hall. We actually had going by his vice president of homeowner, like you missed that town hall and you are now in your credit. He gave incredible insight on how to do exactly that, what to watch out for, if you should work with a credit repair company. So hopefully our team will be able to drop that link in the chat, because there was so much great information about raising your credit scores there that even we just learned so much. So that's a really great call out, and happy that we kind of have a resource for you to help you do that right away. Another question for you. You mentioned the 20% down payment and how most people don't really do that anymore. So what if you don't have that 20% down payment? What are your best options to buy a home, or what should you be saving for if not for 20%?
Right. So like I said, most people don't put 20% down anymore, and there are a lot of great mortgage options for you. So first, there are some government options, VA loans, FHA loans, and USDA loans all require less than about 3.5% or less. The VA loans, it just depends on the lender. So you don't have to save much more than 3.5%, which is great. There are also loans from banks, like Bank of America has a loan for first-time buyers, and that loan is 3% down, and there's no private mortgage insurance, which could save you a couple $100s per month. Usually PMI is about $30 to $70 per every $100,000 you borrow. So that could save you a few bucks there. So definitely, when you talk to your lender, you shop around for sure. You want to shop around lenders and try to get the best rate possible, but definitely ask what programs are available, because credit unions, banks, they might have their own individual low down payment program.
Love that. Really great suggestions, especially reaching out and shopping for a mortgage. Sometimes even I have experience where the place I bank actually wasn't giving me the best rate. So you definitely don't want to just assume because you're banking with someone already that they have the lowest rate available for you. Also really great to know that all's not lost if you don't have that 20% down payment, and that you can actually become a homeowner faster if you qualify for one of those government-backed programs with lower investments. So thank you, Natalie. Let's turn quickly to retirement. And savers, again, feel free to put any of your mortgage and homeownership questions in the chat for Natalie, as we'll be asking those in a little bit. But Taylor, let's start with you. What are all of the options when it comes to saving for retirement? Because people hear retirement and they automatically think just 401k, or for those that are military, TSP. What are the options to save for retirement, and how do you know how to choose the best one?
Cool. Yeah, no, thanks for the question and being a part of this august panel. It's really fun to be here, America. There are a bunch of different ways to save for retirement. Before we sort of get into that, it is interesting that just to note that just because there are a lot of different ways to save for retirement doesn't mean that people actually save for retirement. There's been a lot of legislation over the past 20 years, 25 years to sort of nudge people into different types of plans, and the result has been kind of negligible. Like if you look at sort of young households, the number of people who have signed up for plans and have plans, that number has pretty much stayed flat for the past 20 years. So, which is, crazy. Like there's all these plans. When you sign up when you get enrolled in a job, when you get hired, you get enrolled into a plan automatically by a lot of them. There are a lot of things going on in Washington right now to try and get people to sign up and force them to sign up. So before we so just getting actually signed up is a very, very important and has proven to be a very difficult thing. And if you look at who isn't signing up for something, it's what you'd kind of expect. If you make more, if you work for a large employer, you're more likely to sign up. If you make less, you're less likely to sign up. So what you should actually sign up for kind of depends on who you are and what you're doing with your life. If you get into a big employer that offers a 401k plan, or if you're a nonprofit and a 403b plan that comes with a match, where you contribute some amount of money pre-tax, your employer puts some amount of money in, you should do that. That is free money, as financial planners like to say. You should at least contribute up to the match. The goal is to have about 10 to 15% of your paycheck saved up. If you aren't in one of those plans, there's different options depending on who you are. I graduated college into the Great Recession, as Rick reminded me, and I had triggers, and it was awful. So for that, I worked in a restaurant for 3 years, and it was lots of fun, but it wasn't very good for my bank account. One thing I could have done was do a Roth IRA. Like, those things are absolutely perfect, tailor-made for sort of working class people who don't have super high salaries and work for companies that they won't be there for a long time, or don't actually offer a 401k plan. Self-employed people can do like SCP SEP plans, SEP IRA plans, which are really good. If you have a small business, you can do like simple IRA, simple 401k plans. They each have their own trade-offs, and the numbers get kind of technical about like the number of employees you need and how much you can contribute. SEPs are really good because you can contribute a lot more. But that's sort of like the general cut and thrust of it. If you are working for an employer, long story short, that offers a 401k plan or a 403cb plan, or you work for the military, take that plan, contribute enough so that you and your employer match get at least 10%. If you don't have that option, contribute as much as you can into a Roth IRA. You can sign up for one, in any of the big investing companies like Vanguard or Fidelity, and that's where I would start if I were you.
And so, Taylor, it sounds to me like for those that are business owners as well, that the Roth IRA would be the best option.
If I'm a business owner, I think I would. Look, it sort of depends on what you mean by business owner. Like, if I, have a couple gig jobs where I'm a freelancer,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to school part-time, I think like a Roth IRA would make a lot of sense, depending on who you are. If you're sort of an established sole proprietorship, you might want to look into a SEP IRA. That might make more sense for you.
Okay, great. So that gives some great context, and very helpful, Taylor. Thank you so much. I didn't know that there were so many options that could complement what exactly what stage.
It's an alphabet soup of
I know. So thank you for that insight, Rick. I want to come back to you really quickly to ask you something that I know is on a lot of people's mind. Okay, let's hop into the election. How should the results from the election influence how I save, how I invest, and how our savers save and invest?
We had an election. It's
forever ago.
Yeah, as if we didn't have enough going on with COVID, it had to be an election year. I mean, seriously, that's, someone did that on purpose. Yeah, it's really dicey. And this particular election, as we all know, has been fraught with huge levels of emotion. Right now, it's fair to say that every adult in America is either really happy or really angry because of the election's outcome. And both of those emotions are causing many people to respond with an investment angle. If you're thrilled with how the elections turned out, you are probably optimistic about the next 4 years. You think the economy is going to do really well because you're happy with the results. And that could cause you to increase the amount of money you put into stocks and other high-risk investments. On the other hand, if you're very unhappy about the election outcome, if you're angry about it, you could be very pessimistic about the prospects of our nation over the next 4 years, and that could cause you to sell your stocks. And you could end up, on the one hand, taking too much risk, on the other hand, earning too low in returns. It's a bad idea to take your political views and apply them to your investment strategy. And there are several reasons for this. Most importantly, what we're doing every 4 years is electing a president. We are not anointing a king. The president has to work with Congress to get their policies and proposals turned into law. And not every president succeeds in that effort. In fact, you can ask pretty much every former president, how did it go? And they will tell you they were only able to get through part of what they wanted. So we can't make predictions as to what the tax law will be, economic policy, trade. We have no idea what the results are. We don't even know the results of this election yet. Look at the Senate alone in Georgia. We don't know whether the Senate will go blue or stay red. And that's going to have a big impact on what happens with legislation in 2021 and beyond. So that's the first thing. We have no idea what is going to happen because the president has to coordinate with Congress. Second, that president is going to be in office no more than 8 years, but you're going to be alive for 10, 20, 30, 40 years or more. By the time you're in retirement, you won't even be able to remember who the president was in 2020. Can you quickly tell me who was president in 2000? You got to think about it for a minute. What were the leading social, political, environmental, and economic interests or issues in 2020? In 2000, in 1990, it's hard to remember. And in 20 or 30 years, it's gonna be hard for you to remember what you were so worried about today. So let's stay long-term focused. Let's remember investing is about achieving long-term goals. Kids for college, buying a home, caring for aging parents, your own retirement, and the issues that you're gonna be facing for the next couple of decades will extend far beyond whoever the president is right now. And one final point. Presidents can and do have a big impact on tax law, for example, economic policy, but they have remarkably little impact on what the stock market does. So don't assume that presidents are going to have the kind of influence on your investment returns that you might think. Too often people put too much emphasis on politics when they're making investment decisions, and they're usually making a mistake when they do so.
All very reassuring, Rick, and kind of like a self-check for us if we have gotten too attached to those results and what we should do. So thank you so much for that insight and for kind of calling us out on a lot of things. Like I graduated from high school in the year 2000, and when you asked that question, I had to think for just a second. So that is kind of a really great self-check. So now our attendees have been asking some great questions in the chat that our team has sent over to me. I am going to share those questions and ask some of those to our team of experts. It's going to be kind of like our own personal hot seat, ask the expert round. So the answers are going to be pretty quick. So we're not going to spend too much time with each answer, but hopefully we can get some answers directly from our savers. So Taylor, here's one for you. How secure are SEPs in a volatile economy? I'm not even sure if that's an easy answer or not. So forgive me if it's not.
Yeah, so I would just say that's sort of like a tax structure to set up your savings, and it's less about like the underlying securities. I take the point that if you are, a lot of small businesses fail, if you're in a, it's a bad economy, you're worried about your business failing, that type of thing. But it's not so much that the structure itself is volatile, I would say. But yeah, if you don't want to set that up, a Roth IRA or IRA is another option for you.
Okay, great. Thanks for that answer. Natalie, I saw a really great question here. Because you had mentioned about increasing your credit score if you're looking to buy a home in the near future. What is the best, this is a question from one of our savers. Okay. What is the best credit card to rebuild credit that does not have high fees? Do you have any insight around that?
Oh, that's a good question. So I can't speak to a specific credit card. I would say, that's a great point. You want to, get a credit card that doesn't have any annual fees for sure. You don't want to pay those annual fees. If you're just looking to build credit, you want to pay it off each month so you won't pay interest. So, so if you get a credit card with high interest, it really won't matter, because if your goal is to build credit, then you're going to pay off that balance every month, so you won't incur any interest. And definitely, like I said before, you don't want to pay an annual fee. So really, a card that works for you. If you can get some points, miles, things like that, while you're building credit, that's sort of a bonus. So you can look at some airline credit cards, or Visa and Chase, they have rewards points, things like that. So just make sure you spend money, but you also want to pay off that balance every month on time, to help build your credit.
I can amplify that a little bit too. In a past life, I wrote about credit cards a lot. Yeah, another option. Look, it's really, really hard to say, I have this credit score and this credit history, and so I can get that card. It's just not really how it works from the bank's point of view. You might, if you're having difficulty getting a credit card, you might want to check your credit union. That's like a local credit union nearby. That's a decent starting place if you want to get a no fee annual card, and then do everything like Natalie said, pay off your loans and pay off your bill each month, and don't use too much of your available credit. But one place to start might be the credit union.
Mm-hmm. What about a secured credit card? Is that a great stepping stone if they are looking to rebuild their credit?
So a secured card is a pretty good place to start. At the same time, you're not guaranteed to get it, so just to back up, a secured card is where you put down actual money as the collateral for the credit line you're getting. You're not guaranteed to get it, number one. So that's one thing to look out for when you apply. But it is a good thing. It is a good option to start off with. Some come with annual fees though, so I'd look out for that. And also, if you're living on a tight budget, putting up the credit line limit might be kind of hard for you. Mm-hmm. One place to start that has proven pretty good has been Discover. Discover actually has a decent option. But those are some of the caveats to keep in mind with it.
I think retail cards too are pretty easy to qualify for. Is that accurate?
Yeah, they're certainly easier to qualify for. They have, and a lot of them are no annual fee.
Right.
The one thing to look out for them though is they usually come with pretty low credit limits.
Right.
And so if you have like a $200 credit limit and you go to the Gap and spend like, $100, you've used up a lot of your credit limit, and that will hurt your score. So if you go the retail route, just make sure you're like buying socks and not jeans.
Right.
I love that. I love that. Right. One of our savers, the question that they have, and I think this might be something that Rick and maybe even everyone on our panel can contribute to. So I know you have to pay taxes on the money you convert from a 401k to Roth IRA. But does that money count as taxable income on your taxes for that year, or is it separate from your income taxes? They're trying to decide how to best convert their 401k from their prior job to a Roth IRA. So maybe that's for Taylor or Rick.
Yeah, it is taxable income when you withdraw money from a retirement account. I don't care what kind of account it is, 401k, 403b, TSP, IRA, whatever. When you withdraw money from that account, you're going to pay taxes on that money. And that's a big reason not to do it. That's a big reason to leave the money in the account as long as you possibly can, to delay when you have to pay the tax. The reason some people want to move the money from the account to a Roth is they know that the Roth is tax-free. So this way, future withdrawals are going to be without taxes. But the course of moving creates the tax liability. And that's why we're not really a big fan of it in most cases. If your tax bracket today is going to be similar to your future tax bracket, there's really no benefit to moving the money from the account to the Roth. All you're doing is paying a tax today that you don't have to incur. It's the motivation that people have in doing this is something we call tax arbitrage, which is a fancy way of saying, If you can pay a low tax rate today, you avoid having to pay a higher tax rate in the future. But do you really know what the future tax rate's going to be, especially if you're in your 20s or 30s? By the time you reach retirement in 30 or 40 years, who knows what the tax law will be? So it's a game I usually don't like to recommend that people play, because you might be right, you might be wrong. The only thing we do know for sure is that you're going to incur a tax right now. And then there's one other side point that I'll make, and this often annoys people when I say it, which is why I like to say it, is that when you move money to the Roth or contribute to it in the first place, which is often a fine idea, as Taylor had mentioned, you do have to recognize that the Roth is tax-free when you make withdrawals only because Congress says so. Congress can change the law. And if they do, you would end up paying taxes twice, actually. Paying taxes on the money you put into the account and then paying taxes again when you pull the money out. Now, would Congress ever do that? Well, it all depends on how much you trust Congress. So just be aware of the tax issues when you're dealing with all this stuff.
Oh, really great insights, Rick. Thank you so much. Brianna, question for you from one of our savers. They're asking about custodial accounts, so UGMA and UTMAs, and the difference between those and 529s. Do you have any insight on that? I've never even heard of those before.
I would say those are more specialized accounts that come with a little bit less flexibility than 529 accounts. So if you're looking into them, that's totally fine. I would just say it's probably best to talk to a financial advisor, an accountant, someone who's really familiar with your particular financial situation. 529s are a little bit more straightforward. They're more flexible in the ways that you can spend the money. Again, you can change the beneficiary. There are some features of them that make them really useful for the majority of people. So I would say it's totally fine to look into lots of different savings account options, but what we usually recommend is the 529 is sort of the more default option if you do have time to save for college.
Okay, really, really good insights. We have a question from an Army veteran, and he's, or they, I'm not sure if it's he or she, can't afford to purchase a home in their area, even with a VA loan. Must be California. And moving for them isn't an option. They want to know if they should use the money from their Roth IRA, Natalie, for a down payment to make a home purchase more affordable for them.
It's generally not a great idea to raid your investment or your retirement accounts to make a down payment on a home. So this is sort of a tricky question. Right now, it's tempting because because of COVID penalties. I believe it's under $100,000. If you take out $100,000 from your retirement accounts, you're not penalized right now. So it is tempting. However, you're not going to be able to make that money back up. And if you're nearing retirement, that could be kind of dangerous. I would say talk to a financial advisor and look at your financial goals. Also, purchasing, how long do you plan on staying in this house? The longer you stay in the house, the more equity you can build up, which is always a good thing. So those are some of the things you want to look at, kind of your retirement goals. When do you want to retire? How much do you have saved in retirement? But what is the housing market like? Are you possibly buying at the top of the market right now? Would it be better for you to wait a few years and save up that money, that down payment? Work with a lender who can kind of walk you through what you need to do. So they'll really look at your financial picture and they'll say, this is kind of, why you're not qualifying. Maybe your debt to income ratio is too high. Maybe again, your down payment is not enough. So spend a few years, even maybe get, a part-time job. I know when I bought my first house, that's what I did. I got a part-time job and, I squirreled away for that down payment. So I would, really think carefully before you sort of dip into your retirement accounts.
Really?
Like another
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, just I wanted to add, because all that, I agree with all of that. Another way to think about it is in terms of risk of what you're doing, and so like you can live in your apartment a little bit longer. I think you kind of know that if you're dipping into this other money, you kind of admitting to yourself that you can't quite afford the house now and you're looking for a way around it. You're putting yourself at risk if you lose your job, if your spouse loses their job, if something else unforeseen happens of not being able to make your mortgage payments. That's pretty bad. And also, if you're rating your IRA or your Roth IRA, even if like you get that principal out, you're still foregoing those future gains, and you're still making your retirement security, like the amount of money you'll be able to take out when you actually stop working. You're jeopardizing that, and so you're causing yourself that problem. And so you can live in an apartment now, but you can't really make up that time value of money going forward if you take the money out. So I would be very, very cautious about that.
Yeah, let me pile onto that. I agree with everything everybody is saying, and there's one other issue to consider. If you use money from a retirement account as a down payment, you're paying more for the house than anybody else.
Right.
Because if you withdraw $1, you have to pay taxes on the dollar, which means if you really need the dollar for the down payment, you've got to withdraw $1.50 so that you net $1 to be able to make the down payment. So you're spending a lot more in practical terms. It's a really bad idea.
Really great insights, Rick. And while I have you here, let me ask you this, which will probably be our closing question just for time's sake. So a frequent question that we get at America Saves, especially with older millennials, that's what I am. So we're old millennials, okay? We're becoming the sandwich generation a little bit. So we're saving for all these competing priorities at the same time. We're saving for our kids' education. We've either bought a home or are looking to buy a home, and we are saving for retirement. And so what is most important? How do we focus on those three big competing priorities at the same time? What's your advice to us that are in that situation?
There is no question about this, and very often parents are struggling. Do I save for my retirement or do I save for my kids' college? Parents will do whatever it takes to get their children a better life, and wonderful. That's great. You're a wonderful parent, but let's make sure we have our priorities in proper order. You must choose your retirement over your child's education. And there are a couple of reasons for this. Not because I don't like your kids, but because your kids don't want you to move in with them when you're old and broke. You have to remember that you can drive a car while you're paying for it, right? You get a car loan and you pay monthly while you have the car. You can pay for college while you're working in the career that you got the degree in, right? That's what a college loan is all about. But you cannot pay for retirement while you're in retirement. You have to pre-fund retirement. It's the only one that you do have to do that with. You can live in a house while you're paying for the house, but you can't do it with retirement. So you must pre-fund it, and that means you must make sure you're setting aside on a monthly basis enough to secure your retirement. Once you've done that, and a good financial advisor can tell you how much money you need to be saving monthly to be able to achieve security in retirement. Once you've done that, if you have extra money left over, then you can divert it to college savings and home buying and other aspects. But yeah, your retirement has to come first.
Really, really great way to look at that. We've heard that a lot of times, that you can't take a loan for retirement. One of the things that might be helpful for our savers that are watching, that a lot of our other savers really loved in the past two town halls, is our spending and savings tool. So it's really a very simple spreadsheet that allows you to look at everything. So even, your gym membership, like the adulting stuff that pops up that we don't necessarily think about when it comes to a budget, so that you really can get a clear view of your finances and see what can you contribute to your retirement. Is there anything left over for education to save for home ownerships? So we will drop a link to that spending and savings tool in the chat, so that you guys can all take advantage, so that you can make sure that you have enough for retirement, and to see if you can still save for education and home ownership. Really quickly, this is like fire round, you guys, okay? I want you to share your top thing that if, a saver walked away from today, the one thing you want them to remember from you today. So let's start with Brianna. What is your top takeaway for our savers today?
If you have to take out student loans, start with federal student loans. Do not start with private ones because they'll come with higher interest rates and less protections. And you want those protections if you can't afford your loans in the future.
Really great. Natalie, what's your top takeaway?
If you are shopping for a mortgage right now, make sure you shop around, compare quotes from different lenders, and really make sure you find a lender that can work with your financial goals and your budget. They're out there. It just might take some time to find them.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Taylor, what is your top takeaway?
Have more kids. No, I'm kidding.
That is not my takeaway, I tell you that.
I think my main takeaway is that it's really hard to know what's going to happen in the future. You have less control of it than you might expect, as 2020 should show. And so you just want to be prepared. And so 10 to 15% of your pay into some sort of savings helps you in case disaster strikes, even if it's not your fault.
Love that. Rick, what is your top thing you want our savers to take away?
Marry up.
That's good.
I did that. It worked out really well. So, a little more seriously, but not much more. Simply spend less than you earn.
Right.
If you'll do that, most of the rest will take care of itself.
Isn't that a novel idea? But yeah, that's a really good one. Well, I can't thank you all enough for your time, your expertise. I've personally learned a lot, so I know our savers have learned a lot today, as I can tell by their questions and comments. A quick reminder to our attendees, though, okay, to hop on over to the Facebook page to put your top takeaway so that you can be entered into the Think Like a Saver sweepstakes. And be sure to head over to the Yellow Ribbon Network and take advantage of having your very own financial coach or counseling. It's completely complimentary, as the accredited financial counselors are donating their time specifically to help you with your finances. Now we're going to have some last thoughts around how to map out savings for these big milestones with Metria Wilson-Spotzer. She is the Director of Housing Policy at Consumer Federation of America, just has an amazing background and knowledge of all things financial. She's going to be chatting with the Director of Youth Financial Capability at America Saves, Amelia O'Rourke Owens.
Thank you so much for that panel, Metria. That was a really great discussion.
Yeah, it was a great panel, and I was really excited to hear all of the different points that each of the panelists made. There's some really important things that people need to think about as they move forward and think about saving for major milestones.
Thank you. Yes, we hope so too. So we want to start here by pulling back out to the big picture. What should our savers be thinking about when mapping out saving for those major life milestones?
Well, I think the first and most important thing for savers to think about is that saving is a lifelong process. And so even as you're thinking about major milestones, understand that it's all part of a general philosophy on your part to understand that saving should be a central component of your life. And how you move forward in order to protect yourself, your interests, and your family's interests. And so even though it's really important to kind of focus on the milestones, it's even more important to adopt the philosophy. And that philosophy is that saving is for life.
I like that a lot. Well, you broke down on the panel some of the help and assistance and resources for a down payment. And you know that many savers don't even have that 20% down payment. So specifically in terms of home ownership, what does that mean for saving and home ownership more broadly?
Well, so the big secret in the room is that you don't have to have 20%. In order to be able to be a homeowner. There are plenty of programs out there that will allow you to access homeownership with a 3% down payments, for example, programs by the FHA. There are also programs from your local and state housing finance agencies that will match your down payment in order to help you accumulate those funds. And so I think the most important thing is don't freak out.
Okay.
You're not alone if you don't have 20% to make a down payment. there are programs that can assist and help you. And a lot of those programs come with housing counseling, things that I think are really essential to helping you understand how the home ownership process works, and why saving is a central component of that. Because the reality is that beyond the down payment, there are other expenses that you need to save for as a homeowner.
So the down payment isn't the end of homeownership savings.
No, it's not the end all be all.
And today we're talking all about saving for major life milestones. I think you gave us a great frame not to get too focused on the milestones, but when we are talking about the specific savings goals, we can't leave retirement out of the discussion, right?
Yeah.
So one day, some people are going to want to stop working, right?
Stop working at some point. I just want to say that for the record.
I would like to as well. And
very good.
But we hear from a lot of our savers that they haven't saved anything yet, or they feel like they haven't saved enough. So for the people in those two boats, you know, are they fresh out of luck? What would you say to them?
So the answer is guess what? You're not alone. 64% of all Americans have not saved enough money for their retirement. Rather than be discouraged about that fact, know that number one, you're in good company, you're in the majority of Americans. But number two, and I think most significantly, it's never too late to start. And so one of the things that I think it's really important for people to do is to look at what kind of programs their employers offer. A number of employers offer programs where you can save through an individual retirement account or a 401k sponsored by the employer. In addition to that, a number of employers actually offer matching programs. So whatever you contribute, they will match up to a certain percentage. That's another way that you can help add money to that fund. And you should think about it as additional income, right? Okay. So if you're able to put aside that money and your employer matches it, that just makes what you earn even more valuable, right? And preparing for your future. So the first thing is to take advantage of all of the matches that you can possibly find with your employer. To the extent that your employer doesn't have that, it's okay because you're entitled by law to access an individual retirement account that you can create on your own. And that's money that can be allocated into your retirement, your future, that is not taxed at the same rate that our traditional incomes are. And so if you can, if your employer doesn't offer a program for you, take advantage of an IRA. And the smartest thing to do when it comes to that is actually just go ahead and dedicate a certain percentage out of your paycheck. And don't even look at that money. Have that money go directly into that account so that you can account for it. And to the extent that you think that it's challenging to do so, you know, whenever you get a raise, a cost of living adjustment or something like that, you know, those are the funds. It's a good idea to just allocate into that account so that you don't even see it and you don't necessarily feel the difference.
And you mentioned if you get a cost of living raise, so a smaller percentage raise, use that directly to go to your retirement savings. It sounds like it doesn't have to be a huge amount that you're putting towards retirement.
No, I mean, because the beautiful thing about investments, right, is compound interest. And so the more that you invest early, because of compound interest, it grows at a more significant rate. So if you can do 2%, if you can do 3%, that's still a good thing because that 3% over time with compound interest grows to be far more significant. And so don't worry if you think, oh gosh, I need to contribute a certain amount. It's not necessarily about that. It's contributing what you feel comfortable contributing, what you can financially afford to contribute, and allowing time and the market to work towards your advantage.
Great. And then lastly, I want to talk about milestones running into each other. Mm-hmm. Some people consider drawing down from their retirement, so one life milestone, to pay for a down payment on a house, another milestone. Good or bad?
So the question, the answer that I would have to that is mixed. I would say not the best idea, right? Because retirement is something like we talked about, compound interest matters, right? And so if you take away from the principal, then you are actually affecting your ability to earn more money over the life of it. Having said that, there are sometimes that people decide to pull out of their retirement earnings to make that down payment. If you do so, the thing that I would say to you is that it's so much smarter to do so as a loan from your retirement account as opposed to an actual withdrawal. There are tax penalties that are associated with the withdrawal, but if you take a loan up against your retirement, you don't face the same tax consequences. And what that means is that you repay the loan over a time period back into your own investment account. Again, the ideal scenario is for you not to withdraw the funds altogether, but if you're going to do so, make sure you do it as a loan and not as a pure withdrawal.
All right, so generally avoid, but in a pinch, there's a kind of trick that we can use it as a loan rather than just straight up take it out, withdraw the money.
And face the tax consequences. Yes.
And avoid the tax consequences.
That's right. That's right.
Well, thank you so much, Mitria. This has been really insightful. And I think that these are, more good points that we've heard today about saving for major life milestones. So thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you guys. And thank you for the work that you guys are doing with America Saves.
Thanks for attending Think Like a Saver, Saving for Major Life Milestones. The team at America Saves hopes that you leave this conversation feeling confident, empowered, and ready to take the next steps toward your long and short-term savings goals, like saving for education, buying a home, and retirement. The next best thing to do? Sign up for the free financial coaching or counseling generously provided by Yellow Ribbon Network and AFCPE. And don't forget to enter the Think Like a Saver Sweepstakes to be eligible to win a $500 cash prize that you can use to jumpstart your savings goal. Special thanks to our sponsors who made this town hall possible: AFMA, Daily Pay, Cross River, AFCPE, Mortgage Bankers Association, and Westbanco. Feel free to let us know what topics you'd like to learn more about in our town halls in the comments, and we'll see you soon.